kids.
Hello, Vanessa.
Hi there. I like that countdown. Is that part of the YouTube or something different?
No, it's just a website. If you just, that timeanddate.com, you can go there and you can create countdown timers. And then they have a bunch of different themes and backgrounds and styles and stuff. It's just a simple way to have something on the screen if you're waiting for an event to start and you don't want, you know, like if you walk into a meeting that has just a blank screen and everybody's got their camera turned off and everything, and you're like, am I in the right room? Am I clicked on the right link? So just having something there, I feel like is nice.
I love it. And the countdown feature is super cool. It looks really good.
Thank you. We need like a theme song or something too. Ben, you play music, don't you? You need to make us like a little guitar lick.
Okay, I could think of something.
Something copyright free.
Yeah, right.
So we don't get taken off of YouTube.
We used to live stream English classes on YouTube and had some, I don't know, some kind of Jeopardy themed song when we would throw out a question, wait for feedback. So I can try to figure out something for the next one.
Okay.
Caleb, are you taking care of YouTube and this at the same time? Or is
Well, yeah, I've got YouTube open on one screen. I'm trying not to look at it because it's very distracting to watch yourself talk with like a 20-second delay.
I'll handle it.
Yeah, Ben's on it. Okay. So let me close that out. And I guess it's time to get started. I don't really know what to expect for this because we've never done this before. Yeah, it looks like we don't have anybody joining us on Zoom. We'll see if anybody pops in later or if anybody joins on the YouTube live stream. And yeah, I guess we should just go ahead and get started here. I guess I'm kind of running the show for this first one. So the topic we have for our first Tech Talks is the Ally tool in Canvas. And I think Ally is an important tool to have in your back pocket because, you know, we often talk about accessibility and universal design in our online course design. And that means, I mean, the universal design concept means trying to make the content of your course accessible to as many people and populations as possible. So that can mean people that might have some kind of accommodation need, you know, they have a vision impairment or a hearing impairment or something else that makes accessing content more challenging for them, but it also includes everybody else, people with low internet bandwidth, people that don't have very good technology access. Maybe they're trying to get to their course on their phone. People with, I don't know, all kinds of different populations and different needs. The idea is trying to make everything as accessible as you possibly can. And Ally is one tool that can help you do that. So I was just going to kind of give a quick little demonstration of what it looks like, how it works, some of the things it can help you with. And we might also want to talk about, you know, what can it not do? Because it's not, you know, Ben, you said this earlier before we officially started, it's not the cure-all, it's not the magic bullet that fixes all of your accessibility concerns. It's just one tool to help in that process, to improve your accessibility. Because it's also not an all or nothing thing. It's all about improving what you currently have and finding ways to make it more accessible over time. So yeah, let me share my screen 1 second.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Caleb. Accessibility can be such a big topic and really complicated, you know, as far as resolving some of these issues. And I think it's important to keep in mind, nothing's ever going to be 100% accessible for everyone. And so really embracing that +1 approach. Dr. Tom Tobin came in the 2019 e-learning academy and spoke about that. What's something you can do in 5 minutes? What's something you can do in 5 hours, in 5 months? And an Ally is really a good tool for that. What's something you can do in 5 minutes to improve your course's accessibility?
Yeah.
And I really like just kind of that approach and how friendly it is to making it very practical to the issues that are facing our students.
Yeah. All right. So let's just dive into this because we're trying to keep this around about 15, 20 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see this Canvas course?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just kind of an example Canvas course that I built. And it's got some accessibility problems. I did that on purpose so that I could show some things. So basically, as an instructor, you just get into Canvas, you go into one of your courses, one that you want to start working with Ally in. If you don't have the Ally course review tool in your sidebar, then you need to enable it. So to do that, you go down to Settings. You go to Navigation. And we need to find the Ally tool in this great big list of links. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Drag that from the hidden items into the visible items. Doesn't really matter where you put it because this is not visible to students. It's only visible to you, the instructor. Then we hit save. And then we go back to the home page. So now we have this Ally course report tool. And we'll get to that in just a second. But I think it's important to note that Ally is always turned on, even if you don't have that link in your sidebar. The link gives you access to some extra tools and some extra views. But the tool is always there. And the most obvious place that you'll see Ally is next to basically any image that you have in Canvas. There'll be like this little dial here. And in this case, the dial's red, meaning there's an accessibility concern with this image. And if we click on it, it will tell us what the problem is. So right now it's got a low accessibility score. It says 25%. I don't really know what that percentage means. I think that's just kind of a conceit that Ally uses to show you how much better you can make something. But in this case, it says this image is missing a description. And it says, what does this mean? How do you write a good description? And just really briefly for anybody that isn't familiar with this concept, if somebody is using a screen reader or some kind of assistive technology in their web browser that reads out loud the text of a web page, when that screen reader gets to an image, if there's no text description for that image, it just skips right over it, which can be a real problem if that image contains some kind of valuable information that you are expecting the viewer to see and understand. But if there is a text description attached to that image, then the screen reader will say something like image, text description, blah, blah, blah. So it's an alternative way of conveying whatever information you want that image to convey. So in this case, the image is just a little animated GIF of a Simpsons clip. So I'm just going to make it descriptive. And then add it. So what's really cool about Ally is without Ally, to do that, I would have to get into the content editor of this page, and I would have to select that image, and I would have to edit that image, and I would have to add what's called alt text to it. But with Ally, I can just do it right there, and it adds that descriptive language to the image for me, and now it's done. Now it says, okay, this image is now accessible. It has a description on it. And now this little icon is green instead of red. So, hey, great, I just improved my course's accessibility. Not a lot, but a little bit, and it only took me 30 seconds. I got another image down here that doesn't have any descriptive text. So again, I want to put something on there. image of your instructor, Caleb Hutchins. If the image was something more complicated, like a mathematical equation or a big infographic or something, then it gets a little bit more complicated, and then you need to start thinking about, is there an alternative way to present that information so students can either look at the image or get that information in some other format. But this is kind of a starting point for thinking about making your images more accessible. Am I missing anything on this part so far, Ben or Vanessa?
No, that's pretty good. And I think that's going to be the component that's most upfront in front of faculty's minds in their courses when they're looking through it. And we've even had some going, why am I getting, red lighted in my course? What's happening? And that's just what it is.
Yeah, great. You'll also see that little red light, green light, yellow light in the modules sometimes. Let's see if I have one here. So I have in my modules, I have a PDF, and this PDF is not very accessible. This is a PDF that I grabbed off the internet, and if I click on that little icon there, let's see what it tells us. So this says the PDF contains images that are missing a description. So same problem as those images on my homepage, but this is more challenging because it's embedded in this PDF. And again, something kind of cool about Ally is if I click on this All Issues button here, it'll break down what some of the potential issues with this PDF are. So PDF contains images that are missing a description. This PDF does not have headings. This PDF contains text with insufficient contrast. So that's a visibility issue for somebody that is colorblind, or somebody that isn't completely blind, but maybe has low vision or impaired vision, and they need to have high contrast text to be able to see it clearly. This PDF doesn't have a title. So this one has a number of different issues. If I clicked on one of these issues here, let's see what it does. This PDF does not have headings. Okay, so that one doesn't give us some examples. Let's click on a different one. I think the image one. Yeah, so the image one is kind of nice because it'll actually highlight every page that has a problem. In this case, it has a lot because this is a very image-heavy PDF, and a bunch of them are just decorative images, but some of them contain information, like this graph here. So if I wanted to make this PDF more accessible, I'd have my work cut out for me a little bit because it's got a lot of image-based content that is not going to be easy for all of your students to read. And their screen readers are probably going to have problems with this as well.
And I think a document like this, if you're going to use this for your class, would be a good time to create maybe an instructional video.
Yeah.
Where you kind of walk through certain aspects. And if you see a graph, you can kind of talk about that graph and explain it. I think that's going to be a whole lot easier than trying to articulate that in the PDF and embedding it. Because if you're embedding all of that in text descriptions, you're really only going to be providing your lens and your expertise to students using a screen reader. So maybe there's another way that you can do that, like an instructional video where you talk through it that can be helpful for all of your students.
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea for this. Like I would do this, I would treat this as if it were like a PowerPoint slide and give a little mini lecture with it as the slides. And I think that's a really important point there, Ben, when you talk about accessibility and universal design. It's not necessarily that every individual piece has to be accessible, but that the content of it needs to be accessible in some format. So it might be appropriate for me to keep this PDF and to have a mini lecture video that goes along with it so that students have those different options, those different choices to access that content. So I think that's a great idea. So let's close out of that. So I've got a couple other things in here. This one is more of a traditional PDF where it's not super image-based, but it does have some images in it. So this might be a case where it might be something that I could go into this PDF and fix. If I have access to Adobe Acrobat, it wouldn't be that hard for me to open this up and just add some descriptive text to some of these images. But again, this one's kind of in that PowerPoint format. So it might be another case where it would make sense for me to do this as a video. If it was more like just a straight up document and has, was missing some headers or things like that, then that might be something where I would want to go in there and redo that document in some way. Maybe make a Word document version of it or something like that. But I better move on so we don't run out of time here. The other thing that I wanted to show really quick was, now that we have this Ally course report link on the sidebar, if we click on that, it kind of gives us a total report of our course. And it gives me a course accessibility score. It says, overall, this course is about 84% accessible. Most of the content in it is just straight up text or images that do have descriptions on them. So those are usually not a problem. But I have those few things, those images, those PDFs that might be an issue. Something that I really like about this course report is this little section here, content with the easiest issues to fix. Because again, like we said, it's not about fixing everything all at once. It's about making improvements as often as we can. And in this case, it's saying, well, there's 3 things you could do right now that would fix your content. If I put descriptive images or descriptive text on these 3 pictures, that's going to raise my overall score. And it'll take me about a minute to do that. So that's something that I really like. It makes it really easy to get started. And then I can start thinking about some of these other things. When it comes to my PDFs, that might be an issue. Then I can start thinking about, well, does this document really make sense to have in this class, or should I find something else? Should I make a video to go with it? Should I give some other alternative text? Maybe there's a web article that talks about this document. And then I can include that as an alternative piece of media. So that's something I really like. I think the course report is super user-friendly, really shows you what the low-hanging fruit is in your course. So I really like that. And then the last thing that Ally does for us that I think is super cool, and it's something that we don't really have to do anything to make it work, is it gives your students access to alternative formats of your existing documents. So let's go back to modules here. And I'm going to click on, let's click on this one, an article on skimming and scanning. So this is just a page in Canvas. So it's all just text, which is a nice, easily accessible format. But up here next to the article, or next to the title of the document, is this little button here, alternative formats. And if you click on that, or if your students click on this, because they also see that button, it gives us some options. We could download this page as an EPUB, which is like an electronic book that you could put onto your Kindle or your iPad or your cell phone, and you could read this offline. So that's accessible for students that maybe don't have really reliable internet access at home. They go to Starbucks or they go to the campus and they get on the guest Wi-Fi and they get into Canvas, and maybe you have some readings for them. They can go in here and they can download these as an EPUB and then read them later, even if they don't have internet access. There's an electronic Braille format, which I think is for students that have like an actual little Braille box that has little buttons on it that lowers and raises to make physical touchable Braille based on the text. I've never really played with one of those, but that's pretty cool. It just does that for you.
Yeah, and just a little background is, since September, we've had 82 downloads for the Braille, for the electronic Braille, over 370 audio transcription downloads, and over 3,500 tagged PDF downloads.
That's really cool. I really want to sit down with one of the students that uses the Braille. I would love to see how that actually works in practice. We should.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen a student use them, and they just kind of sit above, this student had it sit just right below its keyboard. And so just like they would when they're typing, they're keeping their hands there, and it's just articulating through the electronic braille system, and they're able to follow along. It's pretty fantastic.
Really cool. And then I think probably the one, like you said, probably the one that gets the most use is the audio version, because if I click on that and download it, it'll turn the text of this audio into an MP3 file for me. Basically, it's turning it into a machine-read podcast, sort of. And I tested this out. The quality is not bad. I mean, it's obviously a robot voice, but it's a nice quality robot voice with good intonation, good pauses, and reading speed. I was pretty impressed with it. So a lot of people prefer to listen to an audio version of long articles. I know of some students that they'll do both at the same time. They'll keep the text version open on their screen, but they'll also listen along with the audio file while they're reading it. And it kind of just helps them with their focusing and their concentration. Or some students might just download it, put it on their phone, and go for a walk while they listen to the article. Am I missing anything else super important about the alternative formats?
I think this is a good introduction to it.
Yeah. And then maybe the only other thing to say is your students may not be aware of that tool. So it might be worth mentioning it, putting a little thing in your syllabus, maybe near your accessibility statement, or maybe if you do a little course tour video, you might briefly point that out, that they have those options, just so that they know that it's there and they can try it out. Is there anything else we want to look at real quick before we run out of time? Vanessa, what do you think?
I think it's fine. Another time, maybe talk about the Beeline Reader, because I think that if it does work as they contend it does, based on neurological studies, it does help students keep up with the reading and increase their comprehension and speed. So I think eventually might be worthwhile to talk about.
Oh, so I don't really know what that one is. What does that do? How does that work?
So it turns the text into gradients of color ranging from, like violet to blue to reds, which you think would impede reading. But as a matter of fact, what it does is it guides the eye through the reading, and it helps students kind of stay focused. So it's helpful for students that have issues with maybe ADHD or reading comprehension, or just want to increase their speed when they're reading on the computer.
That's really cool. I didn't know about that. I'll have to try that out and play with it later.
Sounds like a future episode of Tech Talks.
Might be.
Hey, well, let me try to take a stab at putting a bow on this one. Ally is a pretty intuitive, helpful tool for analyzing the files and images that you've uploaded in your course, and giving you suggestions on how to make them more accessible. I think it's a great tool in the toolbox of accessibility. There are other strategies to think about as well when you're thinking more proactive. Ally is very reactive. But I think for looking at what we currently have up there, it does a pretty good job of not only informing you of the pieces, the artifacts in your courses that are inaccessible, but also giving you the tools to go ahead and make them accessible. That being said, there's a lot still to kind of massage through and identify other strategies of making some things accessible. And so I think Ally is a good tool and a good way of getting started, but definitely a step in the right direction, and not the white flag of I've done it all and I've conquered accessibility.
Right. Yeah, it's not the magic bullet. It doesn't fix all of our problems. But I from my perspective, just playing with it, it makes me more aware of what I've got going on in the course. Even though I'm already kind of thinking about accessibility, just by testing this out, I've been looking at some of those PDFs that I have put in courses in the past, and I'm starting to think to myself, maybe I could do this a little better. Maybe I need to be more thoughtful about the content that I'm choosing for my class, or think more about those alternative forms that I could give students. So I think it really helps just kind of put you in that accessibility mindset, that universal design mindset, and that's really valuable. Well, what's our topic next week?
Cleaning up your course with icons for meaning and context.
Cool. All right. Well, unless we can think of anything else we want to talk about, then that's probably the end of this episode.
Thanks for kicking us off, Caleb, and appreciate you setting up the live stream. I'll keep my political rants outside of live streamed on YouTube, so I appreciate that.
I'll just cut that. I can cut that part off after we have done the recording. So
that's good. That's good.
now they'll just have to imagine that you have some really wild fringe ideas.
Hey, I do. I usually keep those.
The reptilians, all that stuff. That was quite a speech you gave about the reptiloids there, Ben.
Oh yeah. I'm a big fan of Middle Earth.
All right, well, I guess we can call that an episode, and we will hopefully see people again next week for another episode of Tech Talks. And then this is where you play your guitar, Ben, and play us off.
I'll make a piano piece.